This is Tony Soper talking with Kathy Davies. Kathy, tell us who you are and what you're working on at Microsoft.
Okay. As Tony said, I'm Kathy Davies. I'm a technical writer on the Windows Server team, and I primarily write about virtualization. My baby specifically is Hyper-V. So what I wanted to talk to you about today is we've got a cool new feature coming out in Service Pack 1 for Hyper-V, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about it.
This is Windows Server 2008 R2 Service Pack 1?
Yes.
Why would we want to use dynamic memory?
Well, to understand that, I think you need just a little bit of perspective about how it's worked prior to SP1. So, like all the other basically hardware attributes of a virtual machine, you can set memory, and you set the amount that you want to use for memory, okay? And it's a static amount. What happens when you start a virtual machine is that amount of memory, if it's available on the system, is allocated specifically for that virtual machine. And that amount of memory is always available as long as the virtual machine is running. It's even available when it's paused. Really, the only way to change that amount is to turn the virtual machine off. Makes sense. You want to make sure that the virtual machine has what it needs. So one of the problems with that, though, is what if you have a virtual machine whose memory usage really is kind of spiky? Or what if you're not really sure how much memory your virtual machine needs? You don't really know exactly how much the workload needs. You've just basically got to commit that chunk. So what happens with dynamic memory instead is instead of specifying that one amount, you specify a range. You got a high and a low, and then you also can give it a priority relative to the other virtual machines. And you can even specify, okay, I'd like to have a little bit extra. I'd like to have a buffer. Now the benefit there is it treats it as a dynamic resource, a schedulable resource. It takes a little bit of the burden off of you to do exact sizing. It lets you make better use of your utilization of your hardware, and it also, depending on how well you've sized in the first place or what the usage trends are, it also can improve your consolidation ratios.
Right,
so
makes sense. How does it work? Can you show us?
Yeah,
a quick
let me
demo?
show you just a little bit real quick. So the virtual machine needs to be off.
Well, before you start this, we're looking at beta here, right? SP1
Yes.
beta, so this may change a little bit. What they see in the shipping code may be a little bit different from what we're looking at here.
Absolutely.
But it'll work the same.
Yes.
So how,
Yeah,
how does it work?
Fundamentally, the idea will be the same. We may just tweak a few things. How it works is when the virtual machine is off, you go into the settings. Anyone who's familiar with Hyper-V and tweaking a VM already knows this. And you're going to go to the memory section in the settings pane. Under memory management, we used to just have a field to set the value for memory. Now what we've got is two options, basically, static or dynamic. If it's static, it's just going to use memory the way it's always used memory. If it's dynamic, though, that first of all enables dynamic memory. Then what you're going to do is you're going to set your startup, and that really needs to be how much memory the virtual machine needs to boot. And of course that's depending on the operating system that you're running. You also can specify a maximum, which helps if you want to make sure you have a cap and nobody hogs resources too much. Then there's two other things you can do. You can set a buffer. So this is how much memory I want available for spikes or for changes. And you also can specify when more than one virtual machine is running and more than one virtual machine is using dynamic memory, if resources start getting a little bit low, how do you want Hyper-V to handle this virtual machine compared to the other ones? So once you've got that going, get the virtual machine up and running, and then in the status pane, the details pane for the virtual machine, it'll tell you what the virtual machine is basically using, and you can monitor it that way.
So just to clarify, you have to do this when the virtual machine is off?
Absolutely.
Right, so you got to turn off the virtual machine for this new feature, enable it, and then set your priorities, turn it back on, and you're up and running.
Right, and if you same rule, if you want to tweak the settings of the RAM, so if you want to tweak those values, the startup RAM and the maximum RAM, it needs to be turned off. But if you want to change the priority, or if you want to change the buffer, you can do that while the VM is running.
Cool. Well, where do we get the beta of SP1 in order to play with this?
It will be available on the Download Center. The other thing I wanted to mention is we've got content about this, as well as remote FX and what's available for SP1 in general. There is, in the technical library, there will be a new section for the Windows Server 2008 R2 SP1.
Beta.
Beta, right. And in that section you'll find something called the Dynamic Memory Evaluation Guide. And that helps you understand what it is, what the controls are, but it also gives you step-by-step instructions so you can quickly walk through and try it, see how it works. Even has a little bit of troubleshooting advice in it.
Great. Kathy, thanks for talking with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.